Welcome to the Consciousness Anywhere and Everywhere podcast. I am Shannon O'Hara, and I invite you to a completely new world of possibilities. Welcome, everybody. How does it get better than this? Hello, all you beautiful people living your amazing lives around the world. I hope you're happy. Today, we are going to explode into a beautiful possibility of consciousness and change. I'm joined by the beautiful Merline Wolsing, whose last name, I'm so sorry. I'm so bad with your last name. Merline and I, Wolsing, thank you. Beautiful. Merline and I have been friends for years. Merline is an access consciousness facilitator from the Netherlands. And today we're going to talk about viruses, the virus of consciousness, viruses of change, how that impacts us as societies, and different ways that we can all get more conscious in this area. Merline has been gracious enough to come on here, and I am so grateful. Merline has been diagnosed as HIV positive for over a decade now. So he has a very unique insight for how to live with a virus that is considered, let's face it, very socially unacceptable. And we're seeing a lot of social insanity going on around the viral threat on the planet right now. So Merline, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me, Shannon. I'm so stoked to have this conversation, or finally have it, because it seems to be its time now to, add some more magic to this whole reality.
So where would you like to begin this conversation?
Just looking at the whole reality around viruses and what that creates between people and between bodies, or just for an individual with having to do with this reality. For more than 10 years ago, after getting diagnosed with HIV, it was almost like I felt like being the only one that has like a red body in between all these blue and green bodies, like danger, 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 danger.
Yeah.
Watch out, don't come close to me, because, I will kill you, basically.
Right.
So that was like my prime point of view. And tried out a whole lot of things that, could possibly also, change HIV and all of that. And, in the end, or eventually finding out about the access tools, which basically like saved my life in first psychologically, and then created a whole lot more possibilities, for me, my body, and basically like being creative with all the realities you get to do with, in this world, if it's about a virus. And now if you look around us, like everyone's like having the danger, 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 either don't come close to me, or, I won't come close to you. So, there's a whole lot of fighting amongst people and points of view. And, what I've just found is like what a gift it is to live beyond conclusion with this whole viral reality.
Right. So that's a beautiful segue, because I was actually going to ask you to expand on more of, you stated a minute ago that the access tools really saved you psychologically when you were really struggling with everything that goes along with being positive virally. So can you talk about that a little bit more? How did the tools help? What did they help with?
Totally. You know what? Living on planet Earth, I would say, as a space being with a body, I went from going to being to like space being, because we're energy, space, and consciousness. And when you're like just so aware of the world around you, all of a sudden having or getting the diagnosis of HIV, it just opens up, boom, this whole realm of, I would say, all the fixed realities that are already living around, living with HIV or something, So that was a burden in my head, in my body. It made me tired. It made me want to kill myself. It made me, want to do
Yeah.
all sorts of things, because so much that reality has to do with panic, fright, debt, and so on.
Definitely.
So, and then living and being persistent or tenacious and like, oh God, like I don't even want this. And how the heck did it even show up in here? I could not even bring it home sexually, to be quite honest. Like why did I get this? Like that's
Yeah.
always the question. It's like, why me? Why me? And I know the first Access seminar I ever heard was by Dr. Danier, and was diligently kind of like put into my world by my mom. And I rejected it for, I would say, about 4 times, because I thought Pock and Pod sounded way too weird. And Who Does This Belong To didn't really click in, because I was so full with all the fixed points of view. Then she managed one time to, like there's so much up around, this reality. If you ask people now, like, what is up for you? It's like there's all this fear, madness, and fear mongering. And that was exactly the same what was up for me 10 years ago or 11 years ago. And then trying to also live a life, be productive and stuff. And then she actually managed to run the clearing statement when I was in the middle of a frenzy. And I was like, was that thing that I didn't want you to use on me? And she was like, yeah. It's like, oh, well, all right then. So then we just rounded up the conversation. I went to the supermarket and I was like, where did my misery go? I just felt this release that I didn't all of a sudden there was space, and my head had cleared up. I felt my back free up, like all this stuckness, like all these points of view had gathered, created whatever they created in my head, my body. Like I couldn't see clear anymore. I would just be in like full mode panic all the time. And it had just dissipated. So I was
after she did the clearing statement just once?
After she ran it once. And
whoa.
I was in the supermarket. I can remember me walking in. I was like, what? And so then I went out. It was like, Mom, what did you just do? I feel so amazing. I just couldn't stop laughing. And then she was like, Bro, are you ready for more? And then she sent me the Seminar of Dane, which she had bought from one of the summits he had attended. And she was so, my mom was always looking for, tools for me to, deal with the world. Because, I would say like, being like an open radio receiver, which it's like it's most of us, we just have powers and abilities that are A, not empowered, and B, we cannot really fathom, and C is like getting into that just usually amps up, everything that is. So that had been like, I would say, working all along, because what are we here for? Now acknowledging is like, might be here to also bring some more consciousness to the planet. And so then, I started listening to that seminar, and basic tools like the clearing statement, Pock and Pod, and Who Does This Belong To, and Light and Heavy. And I had felt happy for the past, I would say, like 2 years going through all of this. So all of a sudden there was like this light and this goosebump sensation. And then when something would come up, either a feeling, or I would say like more a contracted energy, which is usually we identify as a feeling, or a thought, or something that would have me spin down in a downward spiral, or get me all demoned up or something. I would ask the question, who does this belong to? And if it lightened up, it meant like, hey, well, yeah, who does this belong to? So so that took care of so much of the tiredness that I was supposed to have around HIV. Basically, all the basic psychological complaints that an HIV patient should have. So that was already so beyond, like, just having these couple of tools, in my tool belt, when I would run into something that either, because I started, I'd really identifying the energies, which I would use to call feelings. And I would start using the clearing statement just to free me and my body up. And it just changed my whole life in 3 days. I went from killing myself to like, from like not wanting to be alive to, wow, who does this belong to? And now what is possible? Because apparently there's still this viral reality, whatever that is, or I have this virus, within my body. What else is possible there? But that was like the first strand of me actually, being empowered and getting like, more happy.
Right. And your story is like, your story is not unique. I mean, I know many, many people who have had a very similar experience of really lightening up really quickly. I don't think my story is exactly like that. I didn't really have like I'm heavy and dying, and then 5 minutes later I'm like soaring to the universe. Mine was a bit more gradual.
Yeah.
But so you've been really effectively living this I think I like to think of your life as sort of this parallel reality where you're living life just like everybody, but you're sort of living life on this other path, which is with a diagnosed infection, which just on that alone, you're like society puts you like in the shitter. You're like, oh, you're infected. You're in the bad group, and then, so that's what's being used right now, which we're seeing obviously like around the world, is this thing of safety, and the virus is really, really bad. And if you have it, you're really, really bad, and you're going to kill everybody. And so that way of thinking, that thing about that you're a problem, your body is a problem, your body is sick, is really what I would say is like used to control the narrative and really control the situation. And it was really interesting. I was listening to, my husband and I are currently on a road trip right now, and we're in Germany, but we were listening to this really long 3-hour presentation that a doctor named Zach Bush did. And I'll link it in the show notes below, but he's this extremely smart guy. And I love his stuff. He's really, really educated, really, really smart, but I've been listening to him all the way along about what's been going on, like since early last year. And he talked a lot about viruses, and I didn't realize that viruses, there's actually virus is in the micro world. So there's the bacteria, funguses, and viruses are essential for life on Earth. And there are viruses in all of our bodies and in the earth, in the ocean, in all natural matter that actually inform your cells. And then your cells start duplicating the information from the virus. And when I looked at it like that, I was like, wow, that's really interesting. So viruses don't have an energy source of their own, but they connect basically to the cells, and the cells replicate the information from the virus. And the HIV virus is actually prevalent he said something super interesting in this talk. And if any of you guys have the patience and want to get really educated, I highly recommend digesting a lot of Zach Bush's information. But essentially, he was saying that there are people who test positive for the HIV virus who show no symptoms, who are not contagious. So this virus actually exists. Mm-hmm. And then he goes on to talk about how that relates to the current coronaviruses and the SARS and da-da-da-da. But it's taking a much more holistic, natural approach and recognizing what viruses actually are, and then recognizing that the way to treat them is through environmental awareness. A lot of viruses become really unmanageable biologically in polluted environments. And that's where we're seeing a lot of the highest infection cases currently are in really polluted places in China, and in places where they use a lot of glyphosate, which is, has been going on since World War II. It's like a chemical war weapon that they turned into like a fertilizer. It's like basically like effing us all up. So it's information, And
Yeah.
like you stated actually to me before we started recording, you said a bunch of brilliant stuff just about how there's just so much, there's so many like people with so many conflicting points of view. And that's why when we got on here, I was like a little bit like, wow, what direction are we going to take with this? Because I don't want to just be more people giving another opinion, you know, like people just don't need more opinions about this.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at, you know, one of the, like, I would say with this whole reality, like as an infinite being, like if you even like, what are the possibilities? What can you actually create? And what's actually the gift in this showing up? Like, I didn't have that question when I got diagnosed, like that, which turned me into like a dark rabbit hole. But there was always this desire for something else, for something greater. There was a desire to change, and like having something like this, like seemingly thrown into your lap, you know, did it thrown into my lap, but did I actually realize the situation of, you know, getting an HIV positive diagnosis? And now looking at, you know, all the way that tests are being done and run, it's like, I wonder, wow, how much are we actually the creators of what shows up in our bodies? However, that being said, if our point of view creates reality, like it's so easy, like what you said also just a couple of minutes ago, Shannon, like just receiving information, like our brains, at least my brain was so wired, it would just cling on to everything and would actually solidify it into my world and into my way of thinking and communicating with the world. And so it creates all these, you know, I would say rational fixed points of view, but also these energetic fixed points of view, which is, you know, going to be the reality. Like, for example, like, you know, like in, I would say in my case, like, you know, it's a lot, it's a, you know, a chronic disease. You won't ever get rid of it. You will have to like take this medication. Maybe there may be the cure. We don't know. There's always this, we don't know. We don't know in medical reality, which I can really fully acknowledge. It's like, oh yeah, that's a really good stick to like beat the dog with, you know. But anyway, you know, in honor of all doctors, you know, you have doctors and doctors, like the same way you have police cops, you know, that is
it's called all sorts. They come in all shapes, forms, and sizes.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, what is the gift in this? Like, I really like to go with anything, because ever since I started, you know, like I didn't even start at my Access business because I wanted to be a facilitator. Like, I really kind of like, it was like live or die, you know. It's like, okay, at least Access makes me like, you know, like brought back this life into my world and my body, and with all the body processing and stuff. And you know, so how am I going to go through life? And then, you know, going from this fixed point of view reality, which is so easy, like when you have more and more and more and more come your way, like to really live as the question with it, to live beyond conclusion. I would say beyond conclusion comes before living as the question.
It's so incredible. I need to give a little example of this beyond conclusion that you're stating, like, because you've actually said it several times in this conversation, and I think it's really easy to gloss over it or not really look at how that applies to us. And I just saw myself this morning, like I've been on this journey of choosing, okay, do I choose to be literally in the question always, or do I conclude? And I think that most of us don't even potentially cognitize the depth of how much we conclude on a daily basis.
Yeah,
every
it's second. Huge. It's huge.
So we were out hiking this morning, and we were out hiking, and we come to this like fork in the track where there's this like gate over one of the tracks, but it's the direction I definitely want to go. Like you could tell, like the trees get taller up there and the forest is more amazing. And I was like, immediately I went, oh, we can't go that way. Conclusion, we can't go that way. And my husband just sort of started going that way. And I wanted to say to him, I was like, babe, we can't go that way. But I didn't say anything. I just started following him. And we get right up to the gate, and then you can see off to the side, there's actually a track to walk around the gate. And I realized that the gate was there for vehicles, not for pedestrians. And if I hadn't had walked all the way up to the point of choosing, like the choice point of going through the gate or going around the gate, I would have never seen the path to go around it. And I saw how my conclusion I immediately would have eliminated that as a possibility based on not seeing the path around, because I literally needed to take a few more steps.
Yeah.
And so conclusion, and it's just like, that key of conclusion, like you just keep saying it. And I think it's a really big thing to bring up. And I think in the context, I love that how you're bringing up in the context of talking about like the virus of change, the virus of doom and gloom, like watch out, the virus is going to get you. It's so easy to come to conclusion about what that means. And this is where there's so much information out in the world. It was really, you and I actually got the idea to hop on and do this podcast because I had posted a video in a thread that both of us are in about from a doctor. And I'll actually post that link in the show notes of this podcast to a doctor from Texas talking about the vaccine and da-da-da-da. And I posted it. And then a woman, like immediately after I posted it, she posted this like contradicting thing about how the vaccine is this, that, and the other. And I was like, well, that's really interesting. And then you came in, you chimed in, and you posted this whole other thing. And it was just so many different perspectives, so much different information. And you're just sort of like, wow, like, what do I listen to? Where do I go with this? And that's where the tools of Access Conscious really, really help me, because it's always about going with what you know. And the thing is, each and every one of us knows. We can't not know. We are so conditioned to look outside of ourselves for the answer, to look to the authority or the God or the person who we think should know more than us or does know more than us, the parent, that yes, they could give us information, but essentially it's down to each and every one of us to know what is true and to make our choices based on our knowing. And that's where coming to conclusion can cloud your knowing, because concluding isn't knowing. Concluding is taking a fixed point of view and sticking to it. Knowing is always being open, always being in the question. So it's like, I love that you've sort of stated here a couple times about how there's just so much information coming at all of us all the time about this. And like, where do I go with this? When the whole pandemic thing like erupted last March, my husband and I were in Brazil, and my husband is actually a naturopathic doctor. And I turned to him and I was like, wait, what does this mean? Like I started hearing all this stuff and I was like, wait a minute, I need more information. What the heck? So I turned to him and I was like, well, what does this mean? Like, what are viruses and how does that actually work? And he like basically told me, he like educated me for a couple of hours and I was like, oh, interesting. And it totally calmed me down because I was like in panic. I was like, shit, I'm going to die. Like it was just like, I'm fucked. And he was like, babe. Yeah, no, I totally bought into it for like a day and a half. And I was like, oh my God, I can't travel. He's like, babe, what are you doing? Like, and he explained to me how viruses work. Like, and this is the other big thing. Like when you see people wearing these masks everywhere, like masks can do the masks that people are wearing, at least, yes, there are masks that can stop viral transmission, but that's not the masks that we're being like mandated to wear everywhere in public. Masks cannot stop viral transmission. And so he like taught me that and he taught me a bunch of stuff. And I was like, right. So it was like this thing, like I had never actually been educated about this.
Yeah.
And you see a lot of people doing a lot of things who aren't really educating themselves. So and that's not I'm trying not to sound judgy about that, even though I think I am sounding a bit judgy about that. I'll just put links to stuff that I've listened to, stuff that I've used to educate myself, that if any of you guys are interested, you might find it interesting. And ultimately the point of me bringing that up is like last March when everything started going like, full tilt boogie, I was like, oh, okay. So I'm either going to have to freak out and be in total reaction about that there's this issue that my body's going to have, like you experienced when you were first diagnosed, or I'm going to have to start trusting my body.
Yeah.
I had never actually had to fully commit to trusting my body like that before. So how has that, it is.
So it is an interesting reality because, I think like what a lot of people experience now, I started to experience like 10 years ago and started to live through because I have also gone totally, the other way because so much of it felt heavy. And every time when I would go to the hospital, this was prior to Access, I would just feel like I got beaten dead. Like I would be terrified to meet my doctor. And then I found out about some other alternative protocols because I always look for what else is possible. I didn't have that question back then, but I did act like it because I was like,
you're like, I'm not buying this shit. I need some other shit to buy.
Yeah. Like how did that even show? Like why? How did this even show up? So and that is the best of worlds. Like consciousness and medical reality. But then consciousness includes everything. So that's included too. But then I couldn't really combine. I wasn't, I would say, psychologically strong enough, or it was just a smart choice for me to actually leave the hospital and say, you know what, I'm just going to figure this out on my own because, whole story, but, that might be in the story for another time. It's also working on a lot, releasing a lot more of this story, like for me personally, but, like we know as we get into actually diving in now, actually, what the questions I've been asking 10 years ago, I'm seeing come to life in the world. I'm seeing so many people talk about, things virus related that were a mystery for me back then. It was just so hard to find. I just kept on going. And even with the Access tools and the body work and all of that, I was like, you know what? I will take care of everything. That was a great point of view till when it didn't. So, landing up in a hospital with two collapsed lungs is what, occurred eventually. Yet, what that taught me is to actually really be in allowance of what reality or realities, whether it's mine or whatever it's not mine, or, I am having to deal with it. Whatever that is. I literally spent, I would say, 6 weeks in the hospital being an interesting point of view about everything that I had chosen, where I had neglected my body also in my, I would say, my, adventure into consciousness. Because, we have to remember that, us living life, is evolution. And that is about undoing a lot of the anti-consciousness and unconsciousness while going into true creation. Like if you start asking questions about, what else is possible, there's this molecular, that you are. And if you ask it again, all of that gets stronger. It does, bring in other possibilities. And it will also show up where you are personally still living the unconsciousness and anti-consciousness. So much of that is 1.5 years, because it just got so much more, clear also for me personally on, for example, where am I putting my energy, like with, which people are actually going to create with their bodies and with their lives. And with create, I mean, like you will create your reality anyway. But if you don't do it actively, like if you acknowledge that you are the chooser, the question asker, the possibility and the possibility, receiver also in, and what can show up with what your questions are and what your choices are. That if you don't do that, then this reality will do it for you, right? So when I was in the hospital, I was like, oh my God, now I'm in the hospital, now what? Because I had all these points of view against medication. I was totally against doctors, all of that. And, by just pucking myself through it, it was all still so clear, even though my body was nearly on its way out, it was just so clear that I had to stay present and I had to create. So it was like, okay, what would it take for all the best medical doctors to show up who embody most consciousness and actually are interested in true creation? And that did show up, because one day I had to do with the other doctor, and then something had changed, and I had a doctor that I could actually talk to, that I could actually kind of I was not talking to a computer. Basically I was afraid of the computer doctors. The computer says no. So, and then what it did change. So now I have actually, I'm still like, my body's still being treated, which is going perfectly great. Actually, like, always my doctor team says, like, you're such a miracle. Like, you recovered super fast, and how you even got into the hospital, like no one would have ever survived. But so that was also like, what power is in that? Like, so often we just need to create something spectacularly dramatic to prove how powerful we are. That might be another. That might be might be another podcast. It's like, so and to also like be in the question with medication. Like, I was so resistant. I know a lot of people are resistant to many things that come as an external source for our bodies. And going into like, what magic are we in our bodies actually? Like, is just a whole different possibility if you live from the question.
Thank you so much. I think you've stated some of the most beautiful, like, aspects of what consciousness can be. And I love that you have applied like that to something that most people would just, consider fatal or a massive issue or the biggest judgeable offense, or, okay, now you're screwed, it's like, that's not true. That's not even remotely close to being true for you. And I'm secretly hoping that you start to create some very specific, like living with HIV, living with AIDS, access, consciousness, material courses and classes, because I know that there's a lot of people out there who carry this on their shoulders. And let's face it, like, there a lot of, when you look at using consciousness to, make things work better, it's usually scoffed at as
it was a tough road, Shannon. Like, really, like, I have, for as far as I ever had them, lost most of my friends over this that I used to have. But then again, I was in evolution, so how could things not change? What I remember for me is that I knew something back then, and I had asked for something back then. Whatever way it shows up, change never shows up the way you think or can expect. And what it did, and it's still doing to this day, and it will be tomorrow. And sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's not. Like, sometimes it's tough. Like, being confronted with so many fixed ideas, to really stay the question and really know what you know, and also be willing to say no. From always this, am I aware of this? Am I choosing this? And this is one of the things that has gotten really obvious really evident for me. Am I transforming or mutating this reality with my being and my body? Because if any sort of news of any sort of reality comes into my world, meets my body, what has it asked for? What is it asking for? So basically, even beyond myself, what is consciousness actually? What am I creating with consciousness? What's consciousness creating with me? Because a lot of people shy away from whatever rises up, the feelings they get when they see sorts of news or something that amps up their fear. And we all know by now, if you've listened to Shannon for a little while, that fear, beyond like, underneath the fear is the potency. Like, if like nothing ever shows up in our lives that we cannot handle. I've heard this many times, and I really took it to heart, because how much do you want to empower yourself in a world that is not really desiring to empower you? And then, what miracles can actually show up if we start living from the question beyond conclusion, as the choosers we are.
Yes, my brother. Absolutely. Woo-hoo. Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for your beautiful energy. I'm going to link your website in the show notes for those of you guys out there who are interested in seeing the kind of classes that Merline facilitates. Is there anything else you want to add?
What else is possible? What else the fuck
Cool.
is possible? Yeah, like if there's anything, ever, reach out to me. I'm so curious to what else, we can create by ourselves together and for the future.
Yeah, and if enough of you guys ask Merline, maybe he'll actually start to create some really incredible sort of like changing the virus of shame content.
Totally. I mean, if all we need to remember is like, if we ask the question, if we're willing to ask it, it might not show up immediately, but it will start coming to life in whatever way. And it's an adventure. Living life is an adventure, will be, whatever it is, and also what we make it. So thank you, Shani, for your continuous invitation for more greater and more bold and robust, and also more gentle and more soft, because that's always, you've been there all along.
Thank you, my friend. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this show. My target is to make consciousness easy to find and choose. So if you enjoyed this podcast, please leave a 5-star review on iTunes and share this with somebody who you know who might be looking for more consciousness in their life. You can visit me on shannon-o'hara.com or talktotheentities.com. And to learn more about the amazing tools of Access Consciousness, you can visit accessconsciousness.com and be sure to subscribe to the podcast.